Science is not a democracy. Through peer review, scientific journals censor the material they publish. Manuscripts from scientists are submitted to the editors. Then the editors give those manuscripts to a few other scientists that are familiar with the field for review. These scientists are also anonymous, so you will never know who the people are that disagree with your findings or research. These scientists may not suggest publication. They may suggest modification or publication in another journal, though. This is to keep the journals free of undesired publications of manuscripts pertaining to pseudoscience and unscientific material in general. It is also said that it helps to reduce errors in the papers and generally improve the quality of its material. Some new research is being blocked, though, too, because of this process, specifically from problems of groupthink. Communities set up since the 1970s as a community that gives up their personal values, beliefs, attitudes, and so forth for the sake of the whole. During the times of the gentlemen scientists, it was like this. Funding had far less constraints. During the times of gentlemen scientists, it wasn't like this. Funding had far less constraints than now, but they also had less publications. The constraints also indirectly require scientific method, making any work that violates them hard to publish or getting funding for. Submitting papers require conformity to proper scientific practices, and if not, the journal uses peer review as a constraint to refuse publication of the work. Originality, importance, and interest seems more important according to science as well. Nobel winner Irving Laureate was a chemist who coined the term pathological science back in the 1950s, just before his death. Oddly enough, though, he was a Nobel Peace Prize winner. The term was not well accepted among the scientific community, describing in a presentation typical cases involving observation of barely detected causal agents near the threshold of awareness concerning the senses. Nevertheless, they were detected and with great accuracy. Many supporters of the theory have used ad hoc hypotheses to explain their theories, which involve pseudoscience and particularly ESP. These theories, of course, can be reproduced by the supporters, but not by critics opposing the hypothesis. It was claimed that these were not cases with dishonesty, but people who were mistaken about what human beings could do to themselves, to be led astray because of subjective effects, wishful thinking, and threshold interactions. To be clear, though, this doesn't persuade scientists to avoid subjects concerning prions, facilitated communications, cold fusion, or orgone and zero-point energy. Just use caution, be tentative, and understand the history of science, and be aware of the tendencies of human nature, which can lead any easily astray. It is stated that sometimes scientists are led astray and make systematic errors during experimentation by veering off unconsciously from scientific method. For various reasons, and sometimes in rare cases, researchers deliberately report false results. It is common for other scientists to attempt to duplicate the experiments, to duplicate the result and validate the hypothesis. Government-funded agencies and scientific journals usually require that researchers archive their scientific data, entailing detailed experimental procedures, raw data, statistic analysis, and source code. This is to provide evidence of the effectiveness and integrity of the procedure, assist in reproduction, and assist in new experiments for the hypothesis. Not mention helping engineers to examine the potential application for a new discovery. When additional information is needed prior to reproduction, the author of the study is required to provide it promptly. If the author refuses to share data, then appeals can be made to either the editor of the scientific journal that published the study or the institute that funded it. If some irrelevant feature of the study is questioned, this could cause unavoidable problems also. Seeing that all data cannot be recorded on what took place in an environment and only relevant facts are reported, observations are hence sometimes referred to as theory-laden because of small deviations of the result. Due to things such as not saying how big the room was that the experiment was done in, parts of the theory then need to be assumed in order to select and report experimental conditions. Norwood Russell, Hansen, Emery, Lakatos, and Thomas Kuhn have all done extensive work on theory-laden character of observation. In 1958, Hansen coined the term, claiming that all observation is dependent on the framework and conceptualization of the observer. Preconceptions can affect both observation and description. For example, watching the sunrise, two people can see different sunrises, though it's the same psychological phenomenon. Parallax. Kuhn stated the route from the theory to measurement can almost never be traveled backwards. He also revealed that scientists generally have a theory in mind before experiments are even performed. Experiments that are needed to make experienced observations based on evidence. This implies that the nature of the theory itself dictates how the theory is tested. Kuhn further argued, once it has been adopted by a profession, no theory is recognized to be testable by any quantitative test that it has not already passed. Philosophy of science looks at the logic behind science and the ethics that separate science from non-science. From at least one scientist, there are basic philosophic assumptions that form the base of scientific method. Reality is objective and consists of humans and consistent, and humans have the ability to perceive reality. Also, elements of the world have rational explanations. These assumptions from a discipline of methods, principles, and rules of nature, patterns, speech, techniques, theories, and depictions, from the base on which science can be grounded. Theories that criticize this assumption and have given their own account of the logic of science are philosophical systems based on positive facts and phenomena. Excludes speculative speculation, and their philosophies believes knowledge derives from sense and experience. Those who show or prove that theories are false. Thomas Kuhn wrote in his book, The Structure of Scientific Revolution, that when he researched the history of science, he found that what is being used now was dramatically different than what was then an adopted method. His observations do not say how science is or should be practiced. It is merely sociologically important. Paul Feyerabend similarly researched the history of science, causing him to deny that science is a system of methods, principles, and rules that regulate the art. He argued in his book Against Method that scientific progress is not due to applying any particular process for any specific norm or method of science in history. You can find where violating it has contributed to the progress of science. Jokingly, he added, if believers in scientific method wish to express a single universal valid rule, it should be anything goes. Criticisms such as these have led to a radical approach in the sociology of science, which also led to a strong program. The postmodernists of science themselves have also been subjected to intense controversy as well. This conflicting debate between postmodernists and realists, which is overvalues an assumption, and which is full of overvalues and which is overvalues and assumptions, is known as the science wars. Postmodernists claim that scientific knowledge is nothing more than formal discussion and the equivalence of a sermon. Realists claim that scientific knowledge does reveal real and fundamental truths about reality. A lot of information has been written about this subject, taking on the challenge of postmodern observations while defending science as a legitimate method of finding truth.